Hi, everybody. Happy Saturday to you, my friends. I hope you guys are enjoying your weekend so far. Thanks for joining me today. I'm Sarah Ellis with Beadalon, and I have a really cool, this is what I consider instant gratification jewelry. Always a winner as far as I'm concerned when it comes to instant gratification jewelry. And this one is a really beautiful kind of mixture of textures. We're going to be mixing some chip beads with some freshwater pearls, which creates a really kind of different look. And then we're also going to be adding some leather to that, which also takes it to kind of a different place. So this is going to be a bracelet. I forgot to say that part. It is a bracelet. This is a bracelet that you're going to be able to kind of dress it up or dress it down, but you're going to feel fabulous wearing it no matter what, because you've got on pearls, right? And there are so many things you can do with pearls. I love mixing them with kind of earthy tones and earthy shapes, very natural things. So that's why the chip beads are going to be a major player in today's bracelet project. So it's just a simple stringing project. We're going to focus on the stringing. We're going to focus on the crimping. And then the end results are really absolutely beautiful. So let's get started and talk about what we need to create today's project. Oh no. I have just broken my tripod, you guys. Okay, hold on just a second. Let's see. Let's switch you guys around. I'm going to have to figure out real quick. Of course, it's a Saturday. Why not? Let's see. I'm going to try to find something to prop you guys up with real quick. We'll improvise. No problem. Let me just move my beads out of the way. All right. Let's see. Might be a little close. I think this will work. Uh-oh. Maybe not. Let's see. I apologize, guys. Thank you for being patient with me. Of course, something like that would happen just right as we get started. One more little thing to prop us up and we'll be good to go. No worries. Maybe. Oh, be still for me, please, please. Oh my gosh. Okay, hold on. All right, Raina, I don't know what I'm going to do here.
Do you have duct tape?
Oh, wait. Oh, yay. Okay, I fixed it. All right, everybody. Sorry about that. All right, we're going to be working in a really small space, but you know what? That's all right. We're not going to let it stop us because we're going to make a beautiful project today. Okay, so let's get started here. One of the things that you're going to need, which just kind of went by you guys, is a button. And Michael's has a lot of buttons to choose from, but what you want to look for a project like this is going to be a shank style button. So not one of the buttons that has this, you know, that you have the holes that you sew onto. You are going to need a shank for the back of this because this is actually going to be part of our clasp. Okay, so grab yourself a button. And then you're going to need some leather cord. We're only going to use about 8 inches of leather cord. I get my leather cord on these really handy packs. So there's a lot of colors to choose from. And a lot of this goes, you know, it goes a long way. I'm going to use off of this one. I'm going to use the more red that's down here at the bottom, just because it's a nice kind of, it's a different leather look than I think what is expected for this design. So you're going to need about 8 inches of your leather cord, and go ahead and trim that off and just sit it to the side so that we have it. I've got our beads. Let's talk about the beads for just a second. So the beads in the original design for the photo that you guys saw were these really beautiful matte Jasper beads. And I used up the chips here for these. For today's project, I'm going to use these. Let's see, what color are these? Well, I mean, I know they're gray, but let's see. These are matte Picasso Jasper. So just a little bit different. But I'm going to use the chip section. I love these little cards because on the cards, you get so many different sizes, right? You've got a whole strand of your chips, and then you've got 4, 6, and 8mm beads. So these are going to go a really long way, which means that if you're making jewelry for your booth, or if you're making them for your website to sell, you've got a lot of bang for your buck when it comes to these cards. So again, any of the chips are going to work because everything goes with pearls, right? But I'm going to use these kind of gray tones here. I'm going to set these to the side, and then we're going to have our pearls. And the pearls over on Michael's website or in the stores come in a lot of different shapes and sizes. But I kind of try to keep them in the same size category as my chips. So when you're shopping for those, really look at the chips and try to balance, because you don't want to use a pearl that's too small, but then you also don't want the pearl to be too big and overpower your chip beads. You want there to be a nice balance between the two. All right, and we also need some charms for this because I love dangles. I add dangles to everything. I can't resist. So I've got those. And then one last thing for our tools is what's going to be the other part of our clasp, which is going to be a solid ring. And you can get this really cool little 3-pack that has a silver, a copper, and a gold color in it. We're going to use the silver, but feel free to use whichever one kind of goes with your beads. I know that the other strand of the Jasper that I had here would look beautiful with that copper or that gold. So you can mix and match. And this is going to serve as the other part of our clasp, so we don't necessarily need any extra hardware. I do have the Beadalon Findings Variety Pack on hand, and I have some head pins as well that we're going to use for just a little bit of wire wrapping at the end. Okay, so let's get started. You're going to need some bead stringing wire. I am using 19 strand. I'm using the 0.018 inch in silver color. And the 19 strand is a good kind of middle of the road bead stringing wire. This one is very cost effective, and it's also beautiful. If you can see that color that's on there. I know we're really close. I'm sorry. But you're also going to want to get the findings that are going to match with that. And all of that information is on the packaging of the bead string wire. So down here on the side, I can see that for the findings, I'm going to either need a #1 crimp bead or a #2 crimp tube to go with this. So I'm going to be using crimp tubes. They use the #2 crimp tubes for that. And we're just going to go ahead and get started. So as far as tools, you just want your regular tools, but you like your chain nose pliers, your round nose pliers, your cutter tool, and also your standard crimper tool. Okay, that's what we're going to be using the most. We're going to focus on our crimping for sure. So go ahead and cut yourself a piece of your bead stringing wire. You're going to need about 7 inches, 8 inches if you need your bracelet to be a little bit on the longer side. Okay. And we're also going to use wire guardians for this. And I thought I dropped those in the floor when the camera, but I saved 2. All right. So the wire guardians are really super important because they do exactly what the name says. They're going to guard your wire. They're going to protect that nylon coating that's on the outside of your wire. It's going to create a barrier between your wire and any of your findings, whether that's your clasp or your jump rings. So we're going to thread on a crimp tube, and then we're going to take one of the wire guardians and thread our wire through one of the loops, or I'm sorry, one of the holes of the wire guardian. And then we just want to take our bead stringing wire and turn back around and go back down through the wire guardian and back down through our crimp tube as well. Okay. And you just want to pull everything nice and compact. You want to bring your crimp tube right up next to the wire guardian as close as you can get it. And you can even kind of squeeze your wire guardian closed if you need to. But that's completely up to you. The most important part of this is that we want to be sure that our bead stringing wire is not crossing inside that crimp. Whether it's a crimp tube or a crimp bead, it makes no difference, but you want to be sure that those wires are running parallel inside there. Okay, now we're going to use our crimper tool, and we're going to use the back notch of the crimper tool. That's the one that kind of looks like a macaroni noodle. It's got that tooth. And that tooth is going to come down and it's going to further separate out the wires. So you're going to place your crimp in that back notch and squeeze. And when you take it out, you're going to look, you can see how it actually bit down onto that crimp tube and help to further separate those bead or those wires within. That's just going to keep them away from each other so that they do not rub up against each other and cause abrasion. Again, we're just protecting that wire so that your piece of jewelry is going to last forever. Now, I want to take that bead or crimp tube and I want to place it in the front notch. That's the one that's kind of the egg shape. And you want to put it in there side to side and give it a squeeze. And all that's going to do is just make it a little bit more compact. Okay. That's going to keep it nice and compact. Now, in the instructions for this, if you've got the handout, we actually in the instructions started from the ring and went to the button. We're going to start at the button and go to the ring. So it really doesn't make either. It doesn't matter which direction you start with this, just in case you're looking at the the instructions and wondering. We're going to use a jump ring here to connect this to the shank on the back of our button, but we're going to go ahead and string this up first. So if you want at this point, you can always cover your crimp with a crimp cover if you want, or you can leave it just like it is. I like to leave mine just like it is, and I'm going to trim that wire, this little piece of wire here, right up next to the crimp. I don't need that for anything. You can string it through a couple of beads if you want to, but don't feel like you need that extra tail as reinforcement for your piece, because you absolutely don't. All right, so we've got one end ready to go. And I'm going to start with my chip beads here. So I'm just going to cut those off of our strand. Give myself a little bit more room here since I had to kind of improvise with our workspace. All right, so I'm going to thread on my chip beads, and you want to string up as many beads minus about 2 inches. Okay, so you are going to want to leave yourself, in other words, if you want a 7-inch bracelet or you need an 8-inch bracelet, if you need a 7-inch bracelet, you want to string up about 5 inches worth of your beads, because the other 2 inches are going to be your leather and your button and your O-ring. Okay, and that does take up quite a bit of the measurement. So just keep that in mind. You don't want to string a full 7 inches of beads. So I'm just going to thread all of these onto my bead stringing wire until I have the length that I want. And you can just string straight from the card, or you can mix these up. You can put beads in between them. You can put some little metal spacers between them if you want to. I like them just like they are. So I'm just going to keep going, and we will crimp on the other end. When we get to the other end, we're going to crimp and we're going to add our wire guardian and then crimp directly to the little O-ring that I was talking about just a few minutes ago and showed you. So the stringing part works up pretty quickly. This is definitely a quick project, but I feel like the results are amazing. I really love to mix the natural kind of irregular shapes of the chip beads with that beautiful fancy finish that is always on pearls. Just kind of makes it so that your pearls can be worn with your blue jeans and you don't ever feel overdressed, right? And who doesn't feel good when they have pearls on? All right, so working up my strand here. And I'm going to grab my ruler just to check. So I'm getting pretty close to that 5-inch mark. I'm going to thread on just a couple more beads, because I want mine to be a little bit larger than what I normally go for. Okay, so I've thread on all of my chip beads, and now I'm going to crimp again. Now we need to bring in our O-ring for this part. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start just like we would normally. We're going to thread on our crimp tube or your crimp bead, and we're going to thread on our wire guardian. And before we take that wire back down through the crimp bead, so you can go back down through your wire guardian, get that through there. Okay, you can get that through there just like that, but don't go through your crimp tube or bead just yet. Take your O-ring and you want to slide that and slide that wire guardian over the edge, just like that. And you may have to open it up just a little bit, but they will pop together. Okay, and now you want to take the tail end of your wire and go through, oops, your crimp, and then pull everything down. And we're going to crimp again. But at this point, I like to take the tail end of my bead stringing wire and I will actually go through a couple of beads. And it's not for the extra security. It is just for the purpose of kind of getting my fingers and everything out of the way so that I have room to get my crimper tool in there. So I will take my bead stringing wire and I'll go through a bead or two. Just so that I'm kind of pulling, I have a little bit more leverage to pull everything nice and tight. And I don't have to fight against my fingers when I come in with my crimper tool. So you can see I've gone through 2 beads here. And again, just double check, make sure that your bead stringing wire is not crisscrossing inside that crimp. And then you want to come in with your crimper tool and place your crimp in that back notch of your crimper tool and give it a squeeze. And then you want to place it in the front notch side to side and give it a squeeze. Okay. And once you've done that, now you can come in with your cutter tool and trim off the tail of that wire. So we've got 1/2 of the bracelet already done. We've got our beautiful chip bead part here. I would pick you guys up and zoom out a little bit, but I'm afraid I'll never get the camera settled back down again. So you're just going to have to take my word for it. Looks beautiful. All right, so we're going to start again. We're going to do the pearls, and the pearls are going to run right alongside of our chip beads here. And we're going to do it exactly the same way. We're just going to string. So go ahead and grab yourself another piece of your bead stringing wire, and we'll go ahead and get it crimped and ready to go. Okay, so let me move those pearls out of the way so we can focus on the crimping. So we're going to come in with our crimp bead or crimp tube. I prefer the tubes personally. I just feel like I have a little bit more space to work with. Sometimes I feel like those little crimp tubes or the crimp beads, particularly if you're a beginner, they can be a little tricky because they're so small. I feel like you've got more surface area with the tubes, so you may have better luck if you struggle with your crimping. All right, so we're just threading our wire onto our wire guardian. And again, back down through our crimp tube. Okay, and we want to separate out those wires, making sure that they're not crisscrossing inside there. Okay. And you just want to hold those in place. You can see how I kind of separate them out with my fingers just to make extra sure that they are separated within that crimp, and then squeeze with the back notch of the crimper tool, turn to the side and put in the front notch and squeeze. Okay. And again, you can thread that little tail into your beads if you want to, or you can come in and trim it off. Okay. Now I'm going to bring in my pearls here to cut those off of the card. And we want to string our pearls pretty much the same length. So you may not use all of the pearls. You just want to use your chip bead strand kind of as your measure for how many pearls you're going to need. And you want to get it as close as possible. With your chip beads, it can be kind of tricky to make the 2 strands match, but you want to try and get them as close as you possibly can, because everybody's chip beads are going to be different shaped, of course, and the pearls as well. Right, so we're just going to thread on all of our pearls. We're just stringing those on. It's so funny to be working in such a small space. I wish you guys could see how I've improvised. The iPad is actually propped up on a necklace bust at the moment. It was a handy thing to have. I'm glad I didn't move it off my desk because I thought about doing that. All right, so we're getting pretty close. I just want to kind of measure. So I will lay the two ends together and just kind of take a look. So it looks like maybe 4 or 5 more pearls is going to get pretty close here. Maybe 2 more or 3 more. We'll see. Looks like 1 more will do it. All right, so looks like they're pretty even. They're not exact, but you're never going to know that they're off by just a tiny, tiny bit. It's not going to throw your design off at all. All right, so we're going to grab another wire guardian. And we are going to use another crimp here. Okay. And thread on our wire guardian. Now remember, we've got to thread onto the O-ring before we thread back down through our crimp. Okay, so do the wire guardian, but leave that tail free and thread that on to your O-ring. Now, if you want to use a jump ring here, you absolutely can. I just like to thread my wire guardians directly onto the O because I don't have to worry that the jump ring could come open. Okay, so I'm going to take the tail end of the wire and I'm going to go back through my crimp tube and pull everything nice and close. And I'm going to take that tail of that wire and go through about 2 beads or 3, whichever. And sometimes with the pearls, it's a little trickier because they do have a little bit smaller of a hole. So if you can't get through the holes a second time, that's okay. Just go ahead and trim. We're going to try, but may not make it through there twice. Nope. Looks like it's a little tight. I think I could push it, but I don't want to damage the wire. So I'm not going to thread back down through a couple of beads, which is okay because it'll help you to see kind of what it's like to have to crimp in this small section with your bead string wire kind of sitting right there. So it's not harder. It's just a little bit trickier because you are kind of crimping to the side and you've got to be able to hold everything in place, right? Before you can bring your crimper tool in. And if you're lucky, the wire will not fight you too much. So just bring in your crimper tool, place it in that back notch, give it a squeeze, and then into the front notch sideways and give it a squeeze. Okay. And then come in with your cutter tool and you want to trim as close to that crimp as you possibly can since we didn't get to thread back through our beads. All right. So now at this point, we have 2 strands that are attached to our O-ring here. And we are ready to work on the other end. So we're going to grab our button and we're going to open our Findings Variety Pack here. And we're going to grab some jump rings. And I'm going to use 2 jump rings. Sometimes I only use 1, but I think for today, I'm going to use 2 6mm jump rings from the pack. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in with my 2 pairs of pliers. I'm going to hold that jump ring between 2 pairs of pliers. And I'm just going to hold one still and use the other to kind of twist open the jump ring. Don't ever pull your jump rings apart. Okay, you got to do that kind of twisting motion. I'm going to thread on each one of the wire guardians for the ends of my strands. Turn them around the other direction here. So thread those on. And then I'm going to go ahead and close that jump ring. If you want to go ahead and use this jump ring as your connection to your button, you can. So you would just thread that onto the shank before you close. But I'm going to use a go-between jump ring here, which is not necessary, but it does add a little extra length. So if you're looking for opportunities to add length to your design, you can always use jump rings for things like that. So I'm going to thread that jump ring onto the jump ring that we just added. And then I'm going to take that jump ring and thread it through the shank on the back of our button. Okay. And then I'm going to come in with my pliers and close that back. Whoops. All right. So there is one end completely finished. And now we need to find a way to attach this to our ring. So to do that, we're going to use our piece of leather. Remember, we cut our leather at the beginning. So I'm going to take the leather and I'm going to thread it on to our O-ring here. And I'm going to find the middle. So just bring your two ends together and find the middle. And then you just want to tie an overhanded knot. Okay, so just take the two ends, loop them around your fingers, and tie an overhanded knot. And I want to pull my knot close to my ring here. If you need a little extra space, then you don't have to put your knot right up there, but I like to keep mine pretty close. Okay. Now I want to tie another knot. I need to leave myself a loop that's going to be big enough to accommodate my button. So I do like to kind of measure, right? Bring my button in and kind of eyeball it before I tie another knot. So what we're doing is we're just tying off a loop that's going to be big enough to slide that button between. Okay. So I'm holding the leather in that spot, and then I'm just going to tie another overhanded knot. Okay. And then pull that tight. And if you need to use your pliers to help pull that leather tight, there's no reason why you can't do that. Sometimes it's a little slippery, so the tools sometimes will help. But pull that nice and tight, and then you want to double check, make sure your button's going to clear the loop that you made. And you want it to be snug so that it doesn't come off when you're wearing it, but not so tight that you can't get it on and off easily. Okay, so I'm going to take mine back out, and I'm going to trim off some of the tails on my button here, or on the leather rather. I like to leave a little bit behind just because I kind of like the extra little fringe. You can thread large hole beads onto this and tie knots if you want to, or you can add glue to your knot and trim these really, really close. All of that is going to be up to you, of course. Okay. So this part of the bracelet basically is finished, but like I said, I can't just leave well enough alone. I like to add dangles to things. And since I have this really cool O-ring here, I've got an opportunity to add extra movement to the piece. And you can do that by adding some more pearls, putting them on head pins, and then adding them on jump rings and making charms out of them. Or you can use some pre-made charms. These are from Bead Landing on the little green card. And there are a lot of these. So you can use these for a lot of things. You can make matching earrings to go with your bracelet if you want to. I'm just going to take one. So I'm going to grab my pliers, and I'm just going to go ahead and take this guy off of the chain that he is on. And I'm going to leave him on the jump ring that he's on and close that back. And I'm actually going to use another jump ring to attach him to our O-ring. So I'm going to open my Findings variety pack, grab another jump ring, and before I close that jump ring, I'm going to thread that on. Now, the O-ring has its own little jump rings that are attached here. I think each one of the O-rings comes with 2 jump rings. This one's kind of attached to my Wire Guardian there. So you do already have 2 opportunities here to add more charms if you want to. You can just open those up and add extra things to them. You can really fill the entire O-ring up with fun dangles. You can do, charms, or you can make your own little beaded links. Let's do one beaded link using some of our pearls, and then we're going to call this one finished. Let me grab a head pin. and just do a quick little wrapped loop, which is going to be tricky in this little small space here, but we'll make it work. So I'm just going to thread on 2 of my pearls that I have left over. Okay, and I'm going to do a wrapped loop. If you want to do a simple loop here, you can, but I'm always a fan of the wrapped loop. So I'm going to come in with my chain nose pliers. I'm going to grab that wire right where it is exiting that bead, and I'm going to bend so that it is going over the barrel of those pliers. That's going to help give me the perfect amount of room for the wire wrap. See, when you take the pliers away, the measuring's already been done for you. So now I'm going to come in with my round nose pliers and grab the wire. I'm going to take the wire up and over the top barrel of the pliers. And now I need to roll the pliers out of the way so that I can get that wire over to the other side, because right now that bottom barrel of the pliers is in the way. So I'm just going to rotate them in my hand and then go ahead and take that wire over to the other side. And I'm going to switch hands, and I'm going to wire wrap in between that loop that we created and the top of the bead. You've usually got about 3 wraps worth of space there, maybe 4. Don't try to push any more than that, because you definitely don't want to crack or scratch the top of your bead, but you've got yourself a little wrapped loop here, and you want to come in with your cutter tool and trim that off. Definitely make sure that you don't leave any of that wire behind sticking out. So you want to trim it off, and then can run your finger across it to make sure there's not any wire left behind, or you can come in and kind of pinch it down with your chain nose pliers. But now what we're going to do is just open our Findings Variety Pack, grab another jump ring and add it to our bracelets, and our bracelet will be complete. And again, you can fill yours up with whatever you want to. So you don't even, you don't have to be done at this point. But just the addition of the charm and at least your pearls or maybe some more of the chip beads really kind of tie the whole look together. Right, so I'm just going to open another jump ring, placing that between 2 pairs of pliers, hold one of them still, and just twist laterally to open that jump ring, thread on our little beaded link, and then we want to attach that to our O-ring and close that back. Make sure you get a good closure on that. Right, and that's it, you guys. Got a really beautiful, fun piece to wear that you can wear all summer. I'm going to hold you up just a little bit. I'm not going to turn you guys back around because I don't have anything to attach you to, but I am going to zoom you out just a little bit so that you can get a better kind of look over all of this bracelet, because I think it is really, really pretty. Any of the chip beads or the natural gemstones will work that you can get from Michael's, and mix and match with the pearls. The pearls come in a lot of different colors and shapes. So mixing those together, I think really adds a fun twist on, you know, pearls that are normally kind of dressy. So I feel like this is definitely a casual way to get away with wearing your pearls every day if you want to. So I hope you guys have enjoyed today's design. Thank you so much for being patient with me and my broken tripod. We made it through, no problems, and you still got to see a fun project. So I will see you guys again soon with another project. Have a wonderful weekend, you guys. Bye.